Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio, joined by Ira Schoffel to my left and Gene Williams to my right, of course, of Warchant.com. Florida State, fresh off a win against Duke. They'll take on Louisville at high noon, Doak Campbell Stadium. ESPN carrying the game there. Florida State looking for revenge. I guess let's do a quick overview, fellas, of where we're at. Florida State's 2-3 on the year. Obviously not the campaign they were hoping to have so far this season. If you want couple of negatives, couple of positives. Well, Florida State's 106th in offensive points per drive this year. That's a negative. Obviously,
130.
Yeah, that's not going to get it done. But they did just win the last game, 17-10, and they averaged over 7 yards per play in that game. We'll get more into that in a moment. But I guess glasses half full. You got some winnable games here if you can get past this Louisville game.
Yeah, but let me start with the glass half empty, Jeff. Let's do that. I'm going to be Mr. Nancy Negative here going into it. Here's the thing. I mean, you got the underperforming defense. Your offensive line's a bit porous, but some of the things that I've really got issues with here going forward, I think, defensively, we keep seeing it time and time again, these third and long situations. You had a 3rd and 17 against Duke. You get, 50-something yards, a guy running wide open down the side. That could have turned the game. You were up 7. You had them pinned deep in their own end, a 3rd and long, exactly where you want to have Duke to turn the game. You didn't do it, and that seems to be happening game after game. I don't like that. The lack of turnovers you forced now, 4 turnovers in 5 games? And I asked Jimbo Fisher about this, and he, kind of just shrugged it off, saying that, these things will kind of come and go. You keep doing what you want. But the thing is, look, you had 4 tackles for loss against Duke. If you're not getting any pressure in the backfield, you're not pressuring the quarterback, you're apt not to create turnovers. So, I have a problem with that. Offensively, you go to the other side of the ball, red zone offense. And don't give me the red zone stat about field goals or scoring. That's nonsense. About scoring touchdowns. FSU ranks 125th in the nation when it comes to red zone in terms of converting touchdowns. That's awful. You got to get down there, you got to score, and then finally I'm going to say these untimely mistakes. Every time you see there's some momentum going, you get a penalty, you get a sack, you get a turnover. It seems to happen over and over again. They got to get past those issues, or this is not going to be a bowl-eligible team.
Yeah, it's a struggle right now. Is there something to give folks hope? I'll turn to you to give the guys hope.
I'm trying to figure out how that glass was half full or half empty, half anything. It seemed like it was pretty empty over there, Gene. Look, there were signs of progress, I think, in the past game. At least the last 2 games, they've had over 400 yards of offense, which is a good sign. The problem is, as Gene mentioned, the red zone offense has been a problem all season. It's been a problem for a while. But on top of that, this team just does not have, with a freshman quarterback, either Jimbo doesn't have the confidence to give him an opportunity to make up negative plays, or they just can't do it. But when they get behind the chains, if it's 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12, whatever it is, they're not converting. They're going to end up punting. It's just what it is. This team cannot make up those deficiencies. So as long as they keep executing 12-play drives like they did that first drive against Duke, where they don't go backwards at all, this offense is fine. They just cannot have any negative plays. I will say the thing about Louisville is they will take some chances. They'll try to get pressure on the quarterback. If you have a sack, you have a busted play, that's where this offense really struggles.
To Ira's point there, too, and notice one of those stats I was giving out, FSU ranks 130th. I didn't know that many teams in FBS in giving up tackles for loss. So when you talk about those 2nd and 3rd long situations, that's happening a lot when you give up all those tackles for loss.
So, in essence, they don't provide tackles for loss defensively, but they give them up on the other side, and so what you see is a team behind the 8 ball every week. I will give a few positives here. You got a young quarterback who's growing up before our eyes, becoming more and more efficient, who isn't afraid to make plays in the 4th quarter. You got a superstar emerging in Cam Akers. You got a kid with a lot of heart in Auden Tate. So there's some kids that are really fighting. Jacques Patrick is continuing to fight and run the ball with toughness. So there's some things to maybe hang your hat on there that we think moving forward they'll be all right. Offensively, over 200 yards rushing this last game yet again, over 7 yards per play. That's a good thing. They're only limited to 17 points, but I thought they played better than that, Gene.
They really did, man. Statistically, you look at that Duke game, you would have thought they won by 2 or 3 touchdowns in that game because they really dominated. Like you mentioned, the plays, the efficiency of your quarterback. Let's talk about that. 18-21 completion. Going back to the end of that Miami game, he completed 15 straight passes. And then look at his quarterback. Let me read this, and I love the trending where it's going. 87 in that first game. Not very good quarterback rating. Up to 116 against Wake, 130.9 against Miami, now 161.2. That's doing some things. He's trending in the right direction you want to see. He's throwing with more authority. You see the ball getting out of there quicker. a very positive sign, I think, for James Blackman. We're seeing that development coming to him. And you mentioned the running game. 2 straight games over 100 yards. You're seeing it, that Cam Akers is growing up before our eyes. He's not taking those big losses. He's running north and south. He's hitting the holes. He's gaining confidence. And Jacques Patrick, I think he's pushing him too. You're seeing better play out of him too. The most physical he's run since he's been at Florida State. So yeah, definitely some positive trending signs by that offense right now.
What do they need to do to turn that into more points?
Well, obviously, like we said, the red zone has to get a lot better, and part of that is James Blackman feeling more comfortable, understanding what he's doing, and the receivers just have to play better. I mean, that's the bottom line. Auden Tate has been basically a one-man show. You got a little bit out of Nooney Murray last week. We've seen Ryan Izzo in spurts here or there, but that receiving core really has to do more to help out. And then the offensive line. You just can't have the false starts when you get in the red zone. You can't have the holding calls. Those are drive killers with a young quarterback. The offensive line and the receivers really have to step up.
We'll see if Florida State can do that and more as they face a Louisville defense that hasn't played very well. In fact, that's what we're going to have to do next year. Let's take a look at Louisville, a team that demolished Florida State a year ago. Lamar Jackson is back. Obviously, we'll look at what they are, but they've got some problems of their own that we can evaluate. We'll hear from Jimbo Fisher as well. That's all next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. We take a look now at Louisville, Florida State's opponent on Saturday at noon. Of course, what you need to know is, unfortunately, Lamar Jackson is back, and he still makes an awful lot of plays, as is Des Fitzpatrick, the wide receiver. Over 2,300 yards passing so far for Lamar Jackson this year, 16 touchdowns to just the 5 interceptions. He also leads the team in rushing yards per game at nearly 100. Here's Jimbo Fisher talking about Lamar Jackson.
Have you ever coached against anyone quite like Lamar Jackson? What does he do that's so unique?
The athletic, I mean, the complete ability to read and throw down the field and create long plays, throw it short, and then the complete ability not just to run or run over you, but I mean, you can't get your hands on. I mean, and as I say, my term I like to say he's deer-like. You know what I mean? That fast twitch, it can just jump sideways. You know, like I tell him, I ain't never seen a deer be slow. I ain't never seen a deer need stretched. Whatever it needs to do, it just takes off and jumps, runs, does whatever. And that's kind of like he does. I mean, he's right there. All of a sudden, you'll have him, and he has an instinct to move in a certain area, and you got 3 guys around him, and all of a sudden they don't touch him. I mean, you know, there's unique players like that. And tell you what he is, too. He's really tough and competitive. If you really watch that film, he's an excellent competitor and a very tough guy, too.
That's Jimbo Fisher talking Lamar Jackson. Will last year's shellacking at the hands of Lamar Jackson in Louisville help in any way for this year's game?
I don't know if it'll help. I mean, I guess from a motivational standpoint, Jimbo Fisher tried to downplay that, but the reality is we all know what happened in that game. FSU's players certainly know what happened in that game, so you would imagine that there will be some emotions. But at the same time, it wasn't like they were right there. To me, sometimes I think a heartbreaking loss it stirs up the emotions a little bit more. They just weren't competitive. It wasn't a game. FSU didn't look like they belonged on the same field with Louisville. I don't know how mad you get about that. You know, so I don't know. I don't know if emotions are going to be a big part of it. And obviously Louisville's going to have a lot of confidence. I don't think that game helps FSU at all. I just think it's something FSU just has to try to erase from their memories.
Yeah, you wonder, do you just burn the tape and say this is one of those games for the ages that happen occasionally to programs? We've seen it even happen to great programs. It reminds me of when Clemson gave up 77 points to West Virginia in the Orange Bowl. You know, Dabo joked about that and said, well, sometimes things happen like that when it gets away from you. They won't totally shut down Lamar Jackson, but what can they do defensively to slow him down?
Well, that's obviously everybody knows that's a game plan when you play Louisville, yet he goes out there and does it. He has over 3,000 combined yards so far. He's averaging 430 yards a game between his passing and running. Keep in mind, FSU has 346 as a team. So that's doing some things right there. So he's, Captain Obvious. You got to sell out against him. But you see it game after game. I saw the Boston College game, the second half, they had a little zone read play. The defense sold out on the running back. Middle of the field, wide open as he runs for a 50-yard touchdown. You just absolutely have to sell out on him and contain, obviously. Can't let him get out in open space and do those kind of things. I don't care, but 2-3 spies on him you got to do. If you're going to lose by these other players beating you, so be it. Obviously, they got a really good receiver, but their next closest running back, I think, has 275 yards. Lamar Jackson has 690 yards. So, I mean, he's there almost their entire running game, too. So, obviously, you contain him. You're not going to stop him. Limit him a little bit. Don't let him go hog wild, then you got a shot.
Well, you know, the good news is that Louisville doesn't play very good defense. Let's go that route and start to talk about that for a second, because I actually was going to quote all these statistics for you, and certainly I can mention Trayvon Young's a nice player and John Greenard's a nice player at linebacker, but they give up tons of big plays in the passing game. back into the secondary, not very good there, but they also got bludgeoned by Boston College last week in the run game. Florida State seems to be counting now on this run game, so it could be interesting to see. They don't do anything well. You asked the question, why is Louisville's defense so lousy this year? Can you answer that? I mean, by just saying that they're terrible across the board?
Yeah, pretty much. Depending on who they play is how the other team attacks them. I mean, North Carolina threw for, I think, 400 yards against them, and North Carolina's offense has been brutal, decimated by injuries. They threw for 400 yards. Other teams have run all over them. As you said, Boston College, Clemson did both. They ran for 300, passed for 300, just took whatever they wanted. Really, if you look at the overall statistics, you can be deceived a little bit. Louisville's passing stats are bad against everybody, but their pass defense stats, but their run defense stats are okay if you look at the whole season. But when you look at it against quality teams, they're really skewed by the Kent State game and the Murray State game. I think the Murray State game in particular, they gave up like 19 rushing yards on 22 carries. They have feasted on those couple of bad offenses. But for the most part, anybody they've played with a pulse on offense has gotten what they've wanted.
Do you have a side you think is more vulnerable or an aspect of the run defense or the pass defense?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think before we even get into it, I think there's a little bit of a misconception when it comes to Louisville. We all have this 63-point game in our minds. We think this is a really good team. They really have not been a very good team as of late. Their last 9 games against FBS opponents, they're 3-6. And to Ira's point against the defense, they've given, in the Power 5 teams this year, they're giving up an average of 39 points a game. Seems like you can do what you want. I think they're technically probably a little bit more vulnerable against the pass, but I think the way FSU's done so well with the run lately, 2 games in a row, rushing over 200 yards. BC had, 364 rushing yards against them. I know BC's a power team, they can do that. But I think FSU's got some backs that can do that too against them. I think this is where you would like them to be more vulnerable against them. If you can go out and run for 300-plus yards in this game, then I really like FSU's chances because you're keeping Lamar Jackson off the field.
Well, that's the big component, right? We talk about this. It's also an attitude. I mean, there's an attitude of toughness that comes with the run game, and if you establish that and that's your identity, you're doing 2 things. You're becoming tougher as a team, and you're keeping Lamar Jackson off the field. As Gene just noted, I think that's the obvious answer for Jimbo right now. It seems to be the one that he's counting on.
Yeah, I think if you look over these last couple of games, he's really kind of gone to the running game, which you could argue he should have done earlier with a true freshman quarterback in James Blackman. But you look at the Duke game, they ran it about 2-1. I think 40 runs, 21 passes. That's where they need to be. That's a sweep. I know Jimbo likes balance in his offense, but that's really where this team needs to be. I think Jaquez Patrick and Cam Akers are becoming the identity of this team, and this is a great game to have it against a team like Louisville.
Well, and you got an emerging star in Cam Akers who makes something out of nothing, and Jaquez Patrick is big enough to bust plays. I mean, they're stopped on that opening drive in this last game against Duke. If he doesn't fight for that yard to get the first down and keep that drive alive, then they go on and score from there. But that's an identity. It's a toughness issue. It also protects your young quarterback, and you can throw off a play action like they did once you get that run game going. So there's so many elements to that. I think Jimbo's right to move in that direction, and it doesn't take a lot of detail in the run game. You can just be better than the guy across from you. The offensive line loves to fire off the ball in those situations. We got games to play the rest of the year. We'll look at the ones that are the most winnable. We'll take a look at what we think will happen as the keys to victory against Louisville, and we'll make our picks. That's all next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back, Warchant.com report. We look now Florida State. If you want to get more information on game day, always go to Warchant.com's game day page for a complete list of game watching locations throughout the country, and all the other pertinent information can be found right there on the Warchant.com game day page. All right, well, you had huge upsets this past weekend, including by teams on Florida State's schedule, most notably Syracuse knocking off Clemson, and obviously Boston College getting a win over this weekend's opponent in Louisville. That said, guys, other than Delaware State, what would you now look at as the most winnable games on the schedule, the games you're most confident to win that remain on the schedule? You want to pick one?
In terms of confident, I'm not confident in any of them at this point. Now you've got, BC's pretty good. You got to go up there on a Friday night. Syracuse is going to run with Dino Babers, going to run that hurry-up system that just drives FSU's defense crazy.
Yep.
I feel good. The one I feel crazy to say this, but Florida. The Florida Gators, because
their offense is terrible.
Well, they don't have an offensive line, a quarterback, or any playmakers. But other than that, they're. But the thing is, I think it's a matchup thing too, because they're going to play. They don't have a mobile quarterback. They're going to kind of run this pro system. FSU's defense matches up so well with that system, especially when they don't have any playmakers. And the defense is very average. I think FSU can run the football and do a little bit of things. So I'd say Florida's the easiest game other than Delaware State left on the schedule.
Well, it's interesting because Florida State matched up well defensively against Miami. Miami has more playmakers than Florida right now, but you saw for an entire 2 quarters anyhow, Florida State really dominated that Miami defense, and I think it's a better offense than Florida's.
Yeah, I'd say Florida and Boston College. Syracuse, as you've said before, is a game that really
it worries you a little bit.
Looks a little scary for Florida State because of the matchup, because of what they do offensively and how FSU struggles with that. I thought Florida, a couple weeks ago when they were lucking their way into some of these wins, I thought that was going to be a really tough win for FSU down there because their defense was still playing pretty well. But I just think they're wearing down. Their offense is just a complete train wreck. It's worse than it's ever been, which is saying something. Ooh. And so I think those two games, Florida and Boston College, obviously Delaware State. But other than that, I think every game, FSU's got to play well to win those games.
Well, these are big games because you're trying to get bowl eligible. I hate this conversation, but you're trying to keep together some streaks that are nationally renowned. Florida State owns some records here that are in play.
Well, the NCAA doesn't officially recognize that, which is nonsense.
The NCAA is wrong, and obviously you just saw the NCAA's teeth against North Carolina.
But this is why this week's game is so huge. I think if you lose this, I really don't know if you're going to be bowl eligible at this point. Because you're still going to probably lose to Clemson. That puts you, at 5 losses right there if you do that, so you got to almost be perfect the rest of the way.
5 going to Florida at the end of the year, right?
That's what I figured.
So that's why this game, I think you got to win if you're going to be bowl eligible.
Keys to getting said win? 3 of them?
Let's just skip Captain Obvious. Obviously, you got to slow down Mr. Jackson. I'd say, we all talked about before, establishing the run. It solves so much. It wears down the defense. It keeps your quarterback good. It keeps Lamar Jackson off the field. To me, that's far and away. And then the other thing I would just say, when you get in the red zone, score. This isn't a game where field goals are going to do for you. Louisville's going to get some points. You're not going to shut them down. You better take advantage when you get in the red zone.
And when you hit Lamar Jackson, make him know you're there. Hit somebody with a bit of passion.
Yeah, to me, my biggest key overall is this defense has to make some plays that are impactful plays, not just tackling a guy after a 4-yard gain or tackling a guy after a catch. They have to create some turnovers, which they haven't done very much this season. They have to create some negative plays, put Lamar Jackson in difficult situations. Because if your defense can create some havoc, maybe score even, or at least set the offense up, now you have a good chance.
Offensive score.
I know it's hard to even fathom, but the bottom line is I don't think Florida State, the way their offense is playing, can match Louisville's offense. I think FSU's got a better defense than Louisville does. But at the end of the day, I just don't think matching scores with a true freshman quarterback, that offensive line, those receivers being banged up, is a winning proposition. This defense has to, for the first time since the Alabama game, rise up and make some big plays.
As always, it's time for our weekly picks. We'll start with Syracuse at Miami. Given 14.5 are the Canes, and I know the temptation here, but it's an interesting game. But I'll take Syracuse getting 14.5. Really? The hook.
They're outside the Loud House, so you think they're?
I think they'll lose by 14.
I don't like that hook. That's kind of, if it was under 14, I would definitely take Miami. I don't know. I'm going to go with Miami here. I think Syracuse might be a little kind of come down. They're away from home. It's so tough to play. That big crowd will be down there in Miami, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm going to take the points, though. I don't like this. Obviously, I don't like this matchup in terms of where the point spread is, but I do think Miami's, I'm not saying their bag of tricks is running out, but at some point that can't continue.
You got a tip pass on 4th down to stay alive in order to kick a field goal last week against Georgia Tech.
I think they're a little bit deceptive about what their record is.
Wake Forest is at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is given 6.5. They're on the wrong end of that heartbreak I just mentioned, but I like Georgia Tech to win the game. I'll give the 6.5.
You're a reverse hook. I'm with you there. Georgia Tech in this one. Wake's better than you think, but Georgia Tech with that triple option nonsense, I think they'll win by at least a touchdown.
And they got a good pep talk from Paul Johnson after their last game. I'm going to take Georgia Tech in this one.
Penn State's giving 10 against Michigan. That can't possibly be right? I guess it is. I don't know either one of these teams will score 10 points in this game, but I am actually leaning towards Penn State. I hate Michigan's offense. It is very difficult to watch. I'm going to go Penn State wins it 14-3.
I like the pick, Jeff. I think Penn State's overrated. Everybody's jumping on their bandwagon, haven't played anybody, but Michigan's just awful.
That offense, it's impossible.
They're not a good team, so I like your score there. Yeah, give me Penn State.
Yeah, especially without the quarterback. You are picking a 17-point total.
But
we're
going with the under here, kids. We're going with the under.
Team favored by 10 points. I'm going to go with I like Penn State.
Oklahoma State's given 7.5 against Texas. I hate the hook there. Texas is game. They fight hard. They play hard, but Oklahoma State will win this by a couple touchdowns, bare minimum.
Yeah, Oklahoma State has that offense. They're going to put up some points on this. Texas made it close against Oklahoma. Probably a little bit of a letdown. I don't like you, Jeff. I don't like the hook, but go ahead and give me the Cowboys.
Tennessee. Oh, sorry.
I'm going Texas.
Going Texas.
Listen to this guy hanging in there.
Texas.
Oh, you love the coach. I know how much you love the coach.
Yeah, I'm going to take Texas in this one.
Alabama's given 34.5. They'll win by 58. I'll give it against Tennessee.
Butch Jones isn't going to rally the troops?
No, he's not.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they keep putting these ridiculous spreads out for Alabama. They just keep covering. So, yeah, Alabama.
It is amazing, these spreads in SEC games.
I mean, I did have Texas A&M to cover against Bama, and they covered.
That was the one time.
If you got a team that's trying hard and getting the most out of their athletes, they could cover this spread, but I don't think that describes Tennessee.
That's not the case in Tennessee.
No. All right, and Notre Dame, I think, rolls Southern Cal here. I'll give the 3.5. I like Notre Dame big.
I'm with you. This is, if I'm a bet man, this is the one that's on our list that I probably like the most. I like it's at Notre Dame. Southern Cal's kind of Notre Dame's playing pretty well right now.
Yeah, I'm taking Notre Dame as well.
And finally, the one that matters most, Florida State actually opened as a robust 7-point favorite over Louisville. That seems surprising to me. Florida State's given 6.5. No way I give 6.5. But I'll take Florida State in a squeaker to 38-35.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think they cover, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine. This is a weird matchup. They haven't played a horrible defensive team in a while, so I don't know how kind of an offense is going to do against it. But I've got FSU 32, Louisville 27.
Uh-huh. So he's taking Louisville, right?
I'm taking Louisville. But so are you guys getting the FSU logo or are you getting the Louisville logo if you pick them to not cover?
Well, they're not covering. Do we get the Louisville logo? Yeah, but we're taking them to win the game, even though we don't feel real confident in that.
Yeah.
Well,
in a pick on my side with the
We're going to make it 3 Louisville logos because I think Louisville may win the game. I just don't know. I haven't seen enough from this defense.
You picking the Louisville win here?
Louisville win.
Ira again. Last week he picked Duke last week
to cover Louisville. I mean the points Louisville puts up against just about everybody, and I just haven't seen enough out of this defense. I don't think this offense can keep pace with that.
I don't think it's a crazy pick. I just hope you're wrong. For Gene Williams,
not throwing a pencil at me
I'm not mad, man. I'm not mad. No, for Gene Williams, Ira Schoffel, good job, Ryan Kelly. I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time on the Warchant.com report.